everybody has to have an alter ego, right? And I've been thinking about what my alter ego would be, and I think I have an alter ego. His name's Mr. Unlimited. Yeah, you gotta be unlimited. You gotta have a thought process of being unlimited. So when people ask you, what you're thinking about or what you want to do in life or where you want to go, you gotta be unlimited. Tell them, I'm unlimited.
Here we go.
Here we go indeed. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Very excited to be with you on this Monday. I'm Bryson Carver, as always. We've got a fantastic show on tap. So another typical, amazing football Sunday, particularly in the early window of games. We'll get to some of those. My Steelers getting a big-time W on the road in Washington, doing so by final score of 28-27. Getting to that, why Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, as you saw there in that little open piece right there, has gotten the Steelers to being a true Super Bowl contender, as we're already dealing with Wi-Fi issues off the bat, but that's okay. We're going to keep trucking on and keep doing what we do. Also going to get into maybe the craziest, or at least certainly the wildest ending of the 1 o'clock games, of the early window of games. The Kansas City Chiefs, by the hair of their skin, getting out of there at Arrowhead Stadium with a 16-14 W over the Denver Broncos. Why I thought it was actually quite impressive. Get to that a little later in the show. Dallas, it just keeps going in the wrong direction for these guys. It's unbelievable. Talk about the Cowboys. Why they've got absolutely no chance whatsoever at doing anything. Even screw this year. This year's over. Why last night their embarrassing loss to the Philadelphia Eagles proves that there is a true organizational, non-structure going on. Get into that. Jets are sure terrible. What a shock. It's the most predictable, terrible team I've ever seen in my life. Also get into what else we got. We've got the Detroit Lions coming in with a big-time comeback, as well as some other things around the National Football League. A Week 10 recap, and then we'll get into some of our picks for tonight between the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Rams. Good to be with you. We're already, it's unbelievable. We're already dealing with Wi-Fi problems to start the show. I'm not sure what's caused this. Sometimes, again, we'll have like one show a week where it's just not doing it, but we'll try and do what we can with what we have. Hopefully, I'm looking at my monitor right now. It's a little blurry going on right now. If we have to take a quick break just to get it ironed out, we can do that. As a matter of fact, I hate to do this early in the show. I think that's actually what we'll do. So hang on just for a second, folks. Take I can't believe we're doing this early on, but a 1-minute break super fast, see if we can get our Wi-Fi ironed out. And it actually looks better on my monitor. No, let's just go. Let's take 1 minute, get the Wi-Fi ironed out, be back in just a second. I apologize right off the bat, folks. Okay, everything should be ready to go right now on Carving Up Live. We're back. Sorry about the Wi-Fi difficulties. Looks like we're ready to go. So let's go and get the Pittsburgh Steelers, who got the job done yesterday in Washington, in our nation's capital. Doing what we do. Pittsburgh, black and yellow, reigning supreme. So let's get started. But first, Steelers, stand up, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we do in Pittsburgh.
Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
That's right. The Pittsburgh Steelers get off to a 7-2 start, defeating the Washington Commanders yesterday by a final score of 28-27 in Washington. A red-hot Commanders team. These are two of the top records in the National Football League. And I thought it has shown how much of a step the Pittsburgh Steelers have taken in the last 3 weeks. Well, for 3 games, 4 weeks in total. going back to last season, and really if you want to talk about the last 5, 6, 7 years, really since the last time the Steelers actually won a playoff game back in the 2016 season, that's the last time they did it, is that we have all seen a shift from Mike Tomlin. And I don't have to go over the whole story. Bringing in Arthur Smith, which I love that hiring in the offseason. You bring in these two quarterbacks, the vet Russell Wilson, the young kid, developmental guy Justin Fields. What's going to come of it? Well, Justin Fields gets you to a 4-2 start, plug in Russell Wilson, and bam! Russell Wilson's been doing this. All stats provided by our friends at StatMuse, all graphics provided by Alfred Parslow Jr. Since Russell Wilson was inserted in the starting lineup, this, my friends, has been the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last 3 games. 4th in points per game, 6th in total yards per game, 4th in rush yards per game. Russell's deep balls open up the run game for Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. 104.7 pass rating. That's 8th in the NFL. 3 turnovers, only 3 turnovers in the NFL. That's 8th. And obviously the Steelers have not lost a game, and they are currently on a 4-game winning streak going back to the last Justin Fields start. Is that I have coming into the season, I was like, it feels like we're getting 9-8 again. You know, it's the offense is going to be mediocre. Russell's like getting up there in age. Justin Fields isn't a natural thrower of the football. Okay, 9-8, here we go. Maybe we make the playoffs, maybe we don't make the playoffs, and it's just going to keep rolling the same way that it's been rolling for some time now. But I was wrong. And it's now time I apologize to Russell Wilson, because certainly I left him for dead after the 2022 season when I inexplicably picked the Denver Broncos to win a Super Bowl that year. Don't ask. The next year he gets Sean Payton. I'm like, okay, Sean's going to make him better, but that feels more Sean Payton than Russell Wilson. As time goes on, it looks like Russ in 2022 was just a product, shocker, of another bad Nathaniel Hackett offense. Almost like the Jets should have seen that coming before they demoted him. But the point is, he gets Arthur Smith. He gets the stability of Mike Tomlin. You give him a top 5 defense. You give him weapons. You give him, as if he didn't have enough solid weapons with George Pickens doing his thing. And you talk about guys like Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth, all these guys. You add Mike Williams at the deadline, a guy who I'm like, didn't really pan out with the Jets. Yeah, nobody pans out with the Jets. My bad on that one. Nobody pans out with that sorry franchise. Mike Williams catching on 9 snaps total played in the game. Catches what ended up being the game-winning touchdown on a beauty by Russell Wilson with about 2 minutes to go. Russell Wilson was not terribly efficient, only completed about 50% of his passes. Had an interception in the second half that was more like a punt because it was on a 3rd down and long. But 3 touchdowns passing, the deep ball to Pickens, to Mike Williams, to others, was working all day long. And I'm here to tell you, folks, look at the AFC. We'll get into the Kansas City Chiefs in about 8 to 10 minutes or so. The Kansas City Chiefs, I think, are irrefutably, no question, the best team in the AFC. I think in the NFL, get into that later. Buffalo's playing out of their mind. I think Buffalo's the 2nd best team in the AFC. And then it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not to spoil Bryce's best 10 for Wednesday, obviously. Baltimore has a better offense than Pittsburgh does. They certainly, Russell's balling. He's no Lamar Jackson. That's putting it mildly. Here's the problem. A, Lamar's never been good in the playoffs. And B, the Ravens' pass defense is the worst in the NFL. They're like last year's Eagles in many ways. Like the loss of Mike McDonald has proven to be catastrophic for this defense all year long. They've been terrible. Okay. By the way, Lamar's beating the Steelers, and they're going to play them each other this week 1 time in his career. Okay. What about the Houston Texans? They're beat up, they're young, and they just lost yet another game in which they had a 16-point lead. Talk about Detroit later on the show. Very impressive comeback, but some of that was Houston strip sacks by their offensive linemen, shooting themselves in the foot. Look around the rest of the AFC. I love the Chargers. And I still love the Chargers. I think they're a really good team. Yeah, Pittsburgh beat them, and that was one of the Justin Fields starts. And he continuously look around the NFL, or the AFC rather. Cincinnati has got an amazing quarterback, an amazing receiver, and that's pretty much where it ends. Up and down the conference. Find me the elite team that is definitively better than Pittsburgh, other than Kansas City and Buffalo, who ironically play this week, as do Pittsburgh and Baltimore. What a week 11 that we're going to have on tap for Sunday. Is that there has been Mike Tomlin, this is what makes him so great, is his ability to have guys in position to play exceptional situational football. Keep in mind, the Steelers were down 10 in the second half of this game, right? Washington's up 3, first drive, the second half, bam, they go down, score a quick touchdown. All of a sudden, it's 24 to 14. I'm thinking, the offense kind of looks stagnant. There was the failed fake punt. It just doesn't seem to be working for the Steelers. A year ago, 10-point deficit is a death sentence, folks. Mahomes loves it. I mean, Mahomes, the greatest quarterback ever, down 10. Most quarterbacks and most teams, certainly the Steelers quarterbacked by Pickett, Rudolph, and Trubisky last year. Yeah, they're probably not coming back from that deficit. Mike Tomlin had to rely on the run game and defense in order to win games with those guys, with those backups. But with the smart offensive coordinator, with a run game that is as good as it's been in years in Pittsburgh, really since the Le'Veon Bell days in many ways, and they're doing it by committee. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, a little Cordell Patterson sprinkled in there. That team can win the AFC, no question. I mean, just sit back from it and just think about it. You're like, oh, come on, Bryson, you're being a homer. Chiefs are the best quarterback, coach, defensive coordinator, defense, tight, all of that in the NFL. Buffalo's rolling. Buffalo, I think, is the best team they've had in the Josh Allen era. Every other team in the AFC, if you look back to last year, has gotten worse. Houston's not as good as last year. Certainly, C.J. Stroud is not as good as last year. Cincinnati is, compare last year, this year, record-wise, actually worse with a healthy Joe Burrow. That doesn't bode well for them. Cleveland's a mess. Baltimore's defense downgraded significantly. That team in Pittsburgh can go to the AFC Championship game, win the AFC Championship game, get to Super Bowl, and win a Super Bowl. You show me one other team around the NFL other than the obvious, Kansas City's, the Buffaloes, the Detroits, that is operating as smoothly, as efficiently. There's few. I've always said this about Mike Tomlin, and it's in a greater way today than it was last year. The Lions and the Steelers, and to a degree, the Chiefs. No teams in the NFL know what they want to be Sunday after Sunday after Sunday more than these squads do. Russell's added the D-ball. By the way, you know what Russell Wilson's also added? Dear God, the guy's been literally, we'll show you the numbers, literally perfect in the fourth quarter of the season. Let's show the Russell Wilson fourth quarter stats this year in Pittsburgh. They're incredible. 216 yards, keep in mind, he's only played 3 games. 216 yards passing, 3 tuds, 0 picks, completing darn near 80% of his throws, 15 yards per attempt in the fourth quarter. So he's letting it rip out there. 9 first down conversions. And what is that I see down there? It appears to be a perfect passer rating. 158.3 has been Russell Wilson in the fourth quarter. Obviously the offense opened up when Tomlin put him in. Right, you got him facing a bad Jets team and then a bad Giants team back-to-back weeks at home in primetime. You're supposed to blow teams like that out in primetime games. Washington, for their failings defensively, that kid and Jaden Daniels, really good. I don't know if that's breaking news exactly, but Jaden Daniels is a really good quarterback. On his way to being a great quarterback. Dan Quinn's done an amazing job. Go on the road, down 10 the second half. For the last basically 28 minutes of the game, your defense holds Washington, that explosive Commanders offense, to 3 points. Meanwhile, the Steelers offense goes berserk in the fourth quarter. Russell's great. The run, I mean, by the way, the Steelers won this game by 1. They could have easily won this game by double digits. The fake punt, which don't love the call, is actually executed well, other than a wide open drop. But had the fake punt worked, Washington wouldn't have gotten their first touchdown set up in the red zone. Okay, talking about the fact that prior to the Russell Wilson go-ahead drive in the fourth quarter to win the game, they had driven down the field on the drive before that. Freaking Jalen Warren fumbles inside the 5-yard line and gives the ball back to the Commanders. So Pittsburgh did not even play their best game offensively and still scored 28 points and beat one of the best teams in the National Football League on the road with an offensive performance. The defense is going to pick it back up. TJ Watt is the best defensive player in the football by a comfortable margin. Got all the guys we have. Mike Tomlin's got these guys ready to play week in and week out. But I'm sorry, when I look at what this team does on a consistent basis, defensively, relatively speaking, they've been outstanding over the course of this season. Offensively, you're seeing a new Steelers team. You're seeing the deep ball brought back. George Pickens has been finally a focal point of an NFL offense. That feels like that should be the case with the fact that he has the greatest catch radius in the NFL. I think this team can absolutely go the distance. I really, really do. Love what I'm seeing from my Steelers right now. See what the comments say. I'm sweating already. I'm fired up, baby. Jeff, what's up, Bryson? What's up, Jeff? If we're going to talk about how good Brock Purdy was against the Bucs, specifically in the fourth quarter, listen, we'll get to. I unfortunately was not able to dedicate an entire segment to that. With that said, that was highly impressive on the part of Mr. Sturdy Purdy. That was I mean, and by the way, one of the only guys who impressed me in that game. I'll get to that in our Week 10 recap. But I thought, generally speaking, there's no such thing as a bad win in the NFL. That's as close as you'll come to, and I'll explain later in the show. And it has nothing to do with Purdy. Speaking of teams that win games, kind of ugly, not aesthetically pleasing, and doing so in a fashion so much so that too many folks out there are calling it lucky. They lucked into it. They didn't create their own good fortune, so to speak. I'm, of course, referring to the back-to-back champ Chiefs who beat the Broncos yesterday 16-14. I felt comfortable about Denver +7 in this game. Or actually, I did feel comfortable. I think that was Bryce's league bet. I took Denver +7 in this game. I'm like, hey, Chiefs are going to win this game, but it's a short week at home. Chiefs have been playing a bunch of primetime games, these big 4:25 Eastern CBS kickoffs against the Bengals and the Chargers. They were eventually going to come back down to earth a little bit of a letdown game, and Denver almost made them pay for it. What I love about this team, because folks are saying, Chiefs got lucky. Okay. I'm not talking about that last play of the game in which Kansas City's up 2. Denver's lining up. I think it was for a 30, 35, 36-yard field goal. And it gets blocked. Folks, Will Lutz didn't miss. See, and Will Lutz missed that. It's like, that's about the distance of an extra point. You should make that. A little luck involved. Some of that, maybe it's wind, maybe it's a bad snap. Anything could go wrong on a missed field goal. No, they just penetrated the line and blocked it. There's just no other way around it. And that to me is what makes this Chiefs team so freaking scary. There's a part of me, and I did get a chance to do show Wednesday when they beat Tampa Bay in overtime, in which I thought Mahomes was phenomenal in that game. But there's a sense, I've compared them for numerous different reasons to the Golden State Warriors with Steph, KD, Clay, Draymond, where they were, again, the Chiefs aren't, the gap between the Chiefs and the second best team is not what it was in the NBA when it was the Steph, KD, Warriors, and everybody else. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from an organizational structure, from how they play the game, a lot of similarities. Here's another big similarity. I think there's a part of the Chiefs in some of the games I've watched this year, because they're playing top competition. Like Denver is a top competition. The Broncos very well may make the playoffs. I had them as like a sneaky team that can win 8 games or so. I'm starting to look pretty good on that, but they played the Chargers. They played the Bengals prior to the Bengals, slipping a little bit. They played the Ravens. They played all these great teams. There's a part of me, I think the Chiefs are kind of screwing with teams a little bit. Like they're like that kid that's playing his brother that's like 5 years older than him. Like older brothers in high school, younger brothers just now going to junior high. And they're playing Madden, playing Call of Duty, pick your video game. And the little brother is doing his thing. The older brother's like, I'll give him a nice little lead. I'll spot him a good lead. And then I'm just going to run him down and smoke him. That's what I feel like the Chiefs are. They're like, first down, second down, tomato. What the heck? What's the matter? But then what they're going to do is make you pay what it matters. We can show you the numbers right here. The Chiefs don't beat themselves. 45 penalties in the NFL this season for the Chiefs. That's the third fewest in football. They are 52% on third down. If you look at the last 4 weeks, folks, you combine third down and fourth down. Kansas City's converting 62% of the third downs and fourth downs the last 4 games. You look at that number right there. Mahomes has the best win percentage in one-score games, including the playoffs, in NFL history. 70.4%. Now, Tom Brady, as you might imagine, is right behind him. Brady's not terribly far behind at 67.7%, but they just find ways to win close games. Again, it sounds so cliche. It's people going to get mad at me. Oh, it's the refs. It's this. It's that. It's luck. Guys, don't luck into a 9-0 start when you have the best quarterback, coach, defensive coordinator, situational tight end, and defensive tackle in the league. By the way, you can make the case. You make case best special teams in the league. Remember the punt god? He's doing his thing. They got a great punter, Harrison Butker. We know his history as a clutch kicker. And now you got these guys penetrating through the middle of the line, blocking game-winning field goal kicks and saving undefeated streaks. So there's an element, there's a little Warriors here where it's Steph, KD, and Clay would just kind of mess around for a little bit, and then one of them would go nuclear on you for the last 5 minutes of the game. It could be a Curry flurry, it could be Durantula, it could be Killa Clay, could be any of them. And they get you when all said and done. You look up, you're like, dang, we were up like 15 points in the middle of the third quarter, and we lost the game by like 20. How'd that happen? The Chiefs don't necessarily do that to teams because the margin of victory is certainly much tighter in the NFL than it is in the NBA and in basketball in general. But I'm telling you, there's no other way that I could say it other than that they are just exceptional situationally, better than anybody. And that is why, again, I've said all season long, certainly from week one when they entered the season as the back-to-back champs seeking a three-peat, but throughout the season, even when they've had their ugly wins here or there, even when they're barely beating teams like the Raiders was a little bit of a dogfight, right? The Chargers, a beat-up Chargers team, how was that close? All those situations considered, I've kept them at number one all season long on Bryce's best 10. And the reason I do that is because if the offense isn't playing well, defense picks them up. If the defense ain't playing well, just like last week against Tampa, that's all right. Patrick Mahomes, I got you guys. I'll pick y'all up. I'll lead multiple scoring drives in the fourth quarter, and I'll lead the game when you drive in overtime. It's all good. Just relax. Don't worry about it. You give this team any life, they will make you pay every single time. And it's something else. I know Jeff's going to get mad at me. I know I keep taking shots at the 49ers, but this is what separates. I don't think anybody argues Kyle Shanahan's a better coach than Andy Reid, but one of the areas that separates them, details. We already showed you the Chiefs' third fewest penalties in the NFL. But if you watch the 49ers yesterday against the Buccaneers, I've come to the conclusion. Kyle Shanahan just flat out doesn't care about special teams. He doesn't care about them. They're terrible. Niners might have the worst special teams in the NFL. Chiefs probably have the best, and that's what won them the game. It's also what won them a game in some respects with the bomb field goal from Butker to beat Cincinnati in week 2. If one side of the ball's down, the other side's going to pick them up. If both are down, if the Chiefs' defense has been good but is giving up what looks to be a game-winning drive, and Mahomes has missed throws in the fourth quarter, uncharacteristically so, because statistically, Mahomes has been far and away the best quarterback in football in the fourth quarter this year. So it seems like, we got y'all. We got y'all. There's a lot of Detroit Lions here. They could beat you in many different ways. It's not going to look as sexy as it does in Detroit, but you know what? You know what does look sexy? Rings, trophies. That's what Kansas City does. They are... God, they're going to be a tough out. I mean, they're honestly, because I don't think we can say definitively what's great and what's bad about this team for 60 straight minutes. We just know that they'll be great when they need to be. We just know Mahomes is going to lead a scoring drive when he needs to, when the team is down. We know the Chiefs special teams are going to block a kick when they need to, and when the defense is going to get a stop when they have to. And if they don't, again, the special teams can block a kick and save the game. 15 straight wins. That's a 9-0 start. I think it's the first in Kansas City Chiefs history. And they still have not lost since Christmas Day to Aiden O'Connell. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Share the comments. Patrick Brown, what's up, Patrick? He says, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. What an upset week in the NFL and in college football. No question. And I think that's, you look at college. I mean, by the way, Tennessee Volunteers getting the job done. Ugly win against Mississippi State. That's another game where Tennessee is like the Chiefs in the sense that they're a bad covering team. Like, unless Tennessee's an underdog, don't take the balls. But, I friggin' love this line. Tennessee, Georgia. Boy, that's going to be a fun episode of the Vol View on Friday. Saturday night from Athens. Dogs, -9. I just said don't gamble on Tennessee. Gamble on Tennessee. Gamble on Tennessee. I would advise it. But no, also, Miami goes down. Most overrated team in the country. I mean, if not for the whole situation with the targeting against Cal and the Hail Mary, or was it Cal against Duke? I can't remember which game it was. The Hail Mary that was kind of controversial against Virginia in the weakest conference in the land, the ACC. The Miami would have 2, potentially even 3 losses. Like, Cam Ward's fun. He is. I love Cam Ward, but they're not a special team. Ole Miss beating Georgia. Didn't see that one coming. Certainly didn't see it 28-10. Just a brief college football synopsis, and I'll probably go deeper into this on the Vol View on Friday. I don't know if I've seen a quarterback. Spencer Rattler's the exception. I remember Spencer Rattler when he was in Oklahoma. People are like, man, this guy could be the first pick of the draft. Now he's Derek Carr's backup in New Orleans, and he had to transfer to South Carolina. He beat Tennessee. But Carson Beck was a projected top 10 draft pick. his stock has plummeted. Like it is, I think he is a day 3 pick. I'm not kidding. If I'm a 4th round team, like I'm trying to think, would Cincinnati maybe draft him? Like it's just like with a 4th, 5th round selection, he's bad. Like Georgia's winning games in spite of him. They're losing games because of him. Like that's not where you want to be as a football team. Plus, there was a video. One of the Georgia players was like dancing with the Ole Miss fans that rushed the field. He was like dancing and partying with them. It was like there's something does not feel about right about Georgia this year. It's just, and I think a lot of it stems from really poor quarterback play. But to your point, Patrick, big time upset weekend. Big time upset weekend. But I'll tell you what, we'll be back in just a minute. Speaking of upsets, we didn't see one in Dallas yesterday. The Eagles, putting belt to bottom against the Cowboys for 60 minutes, really in the second half primarily. Be back in just a minute on Carving Up Live. We're just getting started. Stay locked in. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Carving Up Live. Carving Up Live. So just count down the days that we have to talk about the Dallas Cowboys in the regular season. I'm sure we'll get to them in the postseason. I'm sure divisional round, we'll get the Mike McCarthy news and Jerry Jones going to be doing some crazy. But let's talk about the Cowboys, because I watching that game, I had a number of takes, but one in particular. But let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
Dallas gets rocked by the Philadelphia Eagles at home. I think the entirety of America, including the fans of America's team, the Cowboys, saw that coming. Philly 34, Dallas 6. I was actually right in the Philly side of things. Dallas put up somewhat of a fight. I had them getting 19. I grossly overrated the Cowboys offense without Dak Prescott. More on Dak, Cooper Rush, that whole situation in just a second. But what you are seeing right now in Dallas is the worst team in the National Football League. I watched Carolina and the Giants yesterday morning. Carolina, how about the Panthers? They've won 2 in a row. Shout out Bryce Young. I'm not giving up on Bryce. I'm not going to do that. I see some talent in Carolina. The Giants have the second best defensive line in my mind to my Steelers in the NFL. I mean, Dable's great. Like they've got some things that they do well. You tell me matter of fact, let me give you a harder question. What does Dallas do well? They do nothing well. They're 3-6. They're on a 4-game losing streak, and they just got blown out at home again. By the way, fun stat on the Cowboys, real quick, because my buddy EJ Savage subscribed to the Boys in the Zone podcast because he's fantastic, does some great content. EJ, if I can find it here, sent me a crazy stat about the Cowboys. According to this from Todd Archer. First time in NFL history, a team has trailed by 20 or more points in 5 straight home games, including the playoffs, with the Eagles now up. It was at 28-6 at this point. The Cowboys had been tied with their longest streak with the 2013-14 Raiders with 4 in a row. So in short, 5 games in a row, the Cowboys have trailed by 20 at home. That's never happened in NFL history. Never. Making history every day, Mr. Jones. But let's ask a harder question, going back to what I was saying. Not what do the Cowboys do well. What do they not do really poorly? Take Brandon Aubrey out of it. Brandon Aubrey might be the best kicker in football. Take Brandon Aubrey out of it. They got a terrible O-line. They're the worst run team in the NFL. They're the worst receiving core in the NFL. With CeeDee Lamb, without him, they're a disaster. Okay, you look at the defense is a disaster. Micah Parsons come back. More on Micah in just a few minutes because he had a few things to say. Not taking any accountability. Mike Parsons nowhere to be seen. Trayvon Diggs was seen, and it wasn't for good reasons. And Mike McCarthy again. I watched the Cowboys, and this sort of segues to my next point. When I watch the Dallas Cowboys, can I tell you what one of the first thoughts in my head is? They don't look like they practiced. And what I mean by that is you watch teams week in and week out around the NFL, great teams, average teams, terrible teams, but they feel like they have a plan. You feel like you're watching like, okay, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to establish the run. How are they trying to establish the run? Maybe they don't have a good O-line. So they're like the Steelers don't have a great offensive line. Quick release, quick throws by Russell Wilson. Like there's a plan. I don't know what the plan is in Dallas. Maybe some of that in defense of McCarthy is they just don't have talented players. They just don't. Now, I've been on this for about 3 years. It's never gotten this bad, but I always said Dallas's talent was grossly overrated by most pundits out there. But the guy who has not been overrated, matter of fact, I've screamed on the show has been underrated, Dak Prescott. Listen, the takes coming into the week, I never got a chance to address them because there was no show on Wednesday. The whole, it's just something absurd coming out of my mouth. The whole Cooper Rush, Dak, like on the same level, like that was, I love Colin Cowherd, but he was suggesting it. You know, you had Greg Jennings, who I respect a lot. He flat out said there's no difference. A lot of pundits, you know, that guy who got let go by the sports network, and I'm not sure, does he have a podcast now? I don't know. He throws Cowboy jersey in the trash. He said it. That obviously got slammed shut. And by the way, we could show you Cooper Rush yesterday. I'm not sure you could play much worse than this. 45 yards passing on 23 attempts. 45 yards passing. 0 touchdowns, 2 turnovers, both were fumbles. Completed 56% of his throws. Passer rating of 61, which is dreadful. And a QBR 0 to 100 of 16, which is a mess. And what we did, we looked at Dak's averages. And by the way, keep in mind, folks, Dak, I looked at it. This is the second worst year of Dak's career. When you combine numbers with wins, it's the second worst year of Dak's career. Show Dak's numbers. Well, he at least throws for 250. He at least throws a touchdown. He has half the turnovers of Cooper Rush in terms of a per-game average. Completes 65% of his throws. Not a great pass rating, but 86 is a whole heck of a lot better than 61. And 46.9 QBR is not good. It's better than 16. So can we, for the love of all that is good, can we please, God, put to bed the unserious notion that Cooper Rush is in the same galaxy as Dak Prescott? That's number one. But no, Dak, he was on the sideline, but you don't have much of an impact if you're a hurt player on the sideline. You just don't. I'm sorry. Nothing against hurt players. You just don't. Without Dak on the field, this team doesn't have a soul. I look around, not only do I say, okay, there's no talent, there's no plan, all of these things. What do they do well? What do they not do poorly? I watch the Cowboys on a week-to-week basis now that Dak's out. And I say, who's the leader of this team? Like, at least Dak Prescott was having you in games. The Baltimore Ravens are mopping everybody. Dak had you in the game against Baltimore. You had a shot to win that. The defense could just maybe get a stop for a change. He went on the road to Pittsburgh, for crying out loud, albeit that was the Justin Fields Steelers. Still the Steelers on the road, arguably the best defense in football, beat Pittsburgh with a game-winning drive. That was kind of impressive. Thrown to somebody named Jalen Tolbert, okay? Kept Dallas in games, gets Atlanta, gets some of these other good squads. I watch Cooper Rush, and it's not even an indictment of Cooper Rush. He's a backup. I'm not going to bash him. I'm going to bash those who say he's as good as Dak, but the team with Cooper Rush, I'm like, where's the leadership? Where's the soul? Where's the identity? Where is the fight in this team? You watch Dak, regardless of what your opinion is of the guy, dude fights his arse off. Week-to-week basis, Sunday after Sunday, or Thursday or Monday or Saturday, no matter whatever the case may be. Guys out there competing for 60 minutes nonstop. Not to say Cooper Rush isn't, but it's to say, oh, Dak stood out. I don't see that from CeeDee Lamb. I darn sure don't see it from Micah Parsons. Everybody else, they're fighting. They're just not talented. I mean, it's not harsh, but that's what I see on tape. They're just, the talent is not there. And I keep hearing week after week, Bill Belichick, Deion Sanders. folks, Mike Vrabel suggested these guys want to go to operations. That are serious about winning and that aren't dealing with that aren't getting defensive about the glare of the sun in the stadium. They asked Jerry Jones. I said, Jerry, have you considered, because for those who don't know, Cooper Rush at CeeDee Lamb wide open for a touchdown in the end zone. It looks like on surface value, or first look, a pretty good throw. CeeDee Lamb couldn't see the ball because the sun was in his eyes, because of how the stadium is built and where it's built. And they asked Jerry after the game, and he's like, what do you want me to do, tear down the stadium? It's like, no, you're a multi-billion, with a B, billionaire. Would it kill you to maybe tint the windows a little bit, maybe make it a little bit easier on your on-field product, the one that's supposed to be winning Super Bowls for you, that you gaslight the fan base on every year and say that they're capable of doing? And then you hear this. I mean, Micah Parsons is asked about Mike McCarthy after the game. Take a listen to what Micah Parsons said.
Mike's on the final year of his contract, so outside there's, of course, going to be questions. What's the sentiment inside the locker room, and what do you tell people who are wondering about whether McCarthy will be your coach next year?
That's above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But, all coaching aside, Mike can lead and go wherever he wants. But guys, I kind of feel bad for guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last year on their way out, because that's what I wanted to hold the trophy for. You want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did.
And to make matters worse, so just a blatant shot at his head coach, who, because of where the coach is at, and McCarthy's flawed, we know this, but I don't think McCarthy is who's the guy that got fired by the Chargers? Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley didn't know what the heck he was doing. I don't think McCarthy is lost out there. I just think he's just kind of limited. He's kind of outdated. His offensive philosophy is outdated. Aaron Rodgers used to go back and forth with him for years about it. But to make matters worse, Micah Parsons is angry at the media for them misinterpreting what he said, and then goes on, if I can find this, on Twitter, where we all know all truth comes to light on Twitter. Says more to come on the podcast, on Micah Parsons' podcast. And thus the franchise in Dallas, without any level of structure or leadership, feel the way you want to feel about Dak Prescott. I'm not here saying he's freaking Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I'm not saying he's one of those guys. He's not. He's just not. I love Dak, but he's not. But this is why I've banged on this table for the entirety of this show, since Carving Up existed back in 2019. This is a nothing burger franchise with no recent history of winning, an unserious owner who's now gotten defensive, who's only going to, what do people do when they're defensive? You ever argue politics? This is fitting given the time we're in today with the election last week. You ever argue politics with somebody, and when you or the other person gets really, really worked up, and you start yelling at each other and insulting the person, what do? You hold to those hold tighter those beliefs. You get even more defensive about it. That's Jerry Jones. And by the way, the media is not even asking him brutal questions. They're just like, the window's a little bright. It's a little bright for those players. I don't know if they can see that well. He's like, what do you want me to put a sledgehammer to Jerry World? And it makes me more mad by the day that Dak signed that extension. It's like, dude, you could have gotten that deal anywhere. Do you know how desperate teams are to have quarterbacks in this league? We know this, but just by the week, now that Dak's gone, oh my God, it's the worst team in football. It is the worst team in CeeDee Lamb. To me, at this point, their only elite player. Zach Martin can still play. The Pro Football Focus numbers will show you not even close to the same player he used to be at his peak, even though he's going, no doubt, to Canton, Ohio someday. Mike Parsons is a shell of himself, or what folks perceive him to be when I was lectured that he's in the same ballpark as Watt, Garrett, either of the Bosa. You can pick Nick, you can pick Joey, either of the Bosa brothers. Max Crosby, Aiden Hutchinson healthy. He's a good player. So it's such a disaster in Dallas. Again, it's the worst team in football. Without Dak, it's the worst team in football. Worst team in the NFL. And McCarthy's going to be gone after this season. Jerry's only going to hold tighter as he's getting up there in age. I mean, again, it's like I said, I was referring to Joe Biden when I was talking about the election and, how Democrats are trying to get him to step down. We all know that played out. And my thing was, okay, do folks when they're older, do they evolve more? Nothing. This is just, it's a true statement. It's backed up by facts. Do they relinquish power more when they get up there in age? At least those that have had previously at one point in their life that Jerry Jones, of course, has had success. Train wreck. Train wreck in Dallas, Texas. There's no other way around it. Check the comments. Patrick Brown, who's a Cowboys fan, is just suffering by the week. I feel bad for Patrick and all Dallas fans out there. With each loss my Cowboys take, I'm at peace. There's no screaming, yelling, arguing with fans. My defense played a fairly good first half and collapsed right on cue. Patrick, I actually don't think they played that well. I think Philly just didn't take them seriously. I don't think I think Philadelphia walked that game. I was like, it's Dallas. There's no Dak. Like, we're playing good football. We're just kind of go in there. And Dallas, to their credit, actually did keep it close. There was, of course, up until Ezekiel Elliott fumbled in the end zone. I mean, it was just a mess. So the defense competed in the first half. Kudos to them. Overshone's a really nice player. I actually kind of like him. But I don't think that I think that felt more like Philly not playing well than Dallas's defense playing well, if that makes sense. Patrick, sunlight, star bright, all the lights still blind players. Jerry doesn't care and will continue to smile from ear to ear like nothing is wrong. Again, Jerry world is scary world. Well, it ain't scary for opponents. Dallas now still winless. They have not, I've said the Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs haven't lost a game since Christmas last year. The Cowboys have not won a home game since New Year's Eve, December 30th, 2023. It's the last time the Cowboys, by the way, even better, the last time the Dallas Cowboys scored a touchdown at Jerry World was September 22nd. 7 weeks ago. They're a disaster. Jeff says, if they pay Micah Parsons, that would be in typical Cowboys fashion. I don't care what anybody says. He's one of the most overrated players I've ever seen. You think? I've always said this. Name the one, big game where you've said, boy, it wasn't looking so good, but here comes Micah Parsons. Chris Jones, it feels like every single Chiefs playoff when Chris Jones makes a play. TJ Watt hasn't been in a whole lot of, TJ Watt's never been part of a playoff winning team. That's not his fault, obviously. But I remember TJ Watt had a big postseason moment. He actually scored a touchdown years ago against Kansas City. TJ Watt's been great. Myles Garrett's had some clutch sacks. Bosa's been big. It's just he's not even close to those guys. Patrick, Cooper, I like this. Patrick's good with the nicknames. Cooper Hush. That's what he did yesterday. Mike Parsons, you should just call him Mike Parsons, M-I-C, Mike Parsons, because of the podcast, has become more of a media darling than a football player. Micah does more, this is absolutely true. Micah Parsons does more preparation for his podcast than playing football. I would have traded him at the deadline and got an overhaul of draft picks. My nephew is feeling the blues like everybody else. I'm with you. I would have traded him at the deadline. I would definitely move him, certainly before you pay him, although Jeff's probably right that they're going to pay him because that's what they do. And Jeff and Patrick are pretty much simpatico here. Patrick, Parsons doesn't impact the game like Watt, Garrett, and Bosa. I'm not giving him a massive extension to muster up one sack every 4 games. Come on. You look at Micah's career. We don't have the numbers on this, but if you look at Micah's career, most of his impact comes in the first half of seasons, or in some cases, the first 3 quarters. The last quarter of the season, December on, disappears. Micah Parsons is nowhere to be found. You got to put on an APB out for him. Jeff, Skip Bayless did his podcast. Yeah, I bet he did. And said he was shocked Russ wasn't better than Dak. Russell Wilson. Cooper Rush wasn't better than Dak. Skip's not a serious person at this point. What are we talking about? He's just not. And Jeff, last thing and we'll move on. Micah gets shut down every single time against great tackles. Every time, to use that, I've crapped on the Niners today. Every time he faces Trent Williams, Micah Parsons, Trent's the best left tackle of this generation, duh. But Trent engulfs Micah. I mean, it's like watching the 10-year-old go against the 18-year-old who's going to Alabama or something. It's like it's not even close. He gets smoked. There's no question about it. And by the way, Dallas, we can't escape these guys. The Cowboys next week have a primetime game a week from tonight, Monday Night Football, against the all of a sudden struggling Houston Texans, who we're about to talk about in just a second. What's the line of that game? Houston, okay, exact same line as this, as we see here today. Houston -7.5. So Texans are a touchdown plus favorite in Dallas. I think despite how poorly Houston's playing, I think that's a safe bet. I mean, I never thought I'd say, if you'd told me before the season Dak's going to miss time and tell me how bad Carolina was going to be just as bad as they were last year and say, who do you think is better? I'm like, I'd still say Dallas is probably better, right? Carolina's a better football team than Dallas today. Yeah, listen, I know they play the Giants, but the Giants have a great D-line. It's unbelievable to watch. All right, here's what's also unbelievable to watch is those gosh darn Detroit Lions just walking up into Houston, down 16, and coming back to win that puppy, 19 unanswered points. It's become a weekly tradition at this point. Dan Campbell, what y'all doing Sunday night in Houston, Texas?
Kneecap.
The kneecaps were aplenty in Houston. Detroit Lions win the game 26-23 in Houston, Texas last night. Texans go up 23-7 at the half. I remember they score a touchdown late in the first half. And I've got a buddy of mine. Shout out to my teammates at the Triple Option, Asher Moore, Addison Ragland. Please listen to our radio show, every Monday morning, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern time, and then from noon to 1 on Fridays. I'll put the link to each show as we go on. Asher's a big Texans fan. He put in our group chat, he's like, man, today's Veterans Day, obviously, and apologies for me, on my part, for not giving love and admiration to all the incredible men and women who serve this great country. It's my bad on the front end. I apologize. But we didn't do a show today. And he said, man, I wish we had a show because I would be insufferable. Game ends. He's like, yeah, I'm glad we don't have a show. Detroit's comeback, and this is not hyperbole, it's back. I mean, it's true. Let me wait till I read this. It's almost unheard of. Like, we have not seen a comeback like Detroit pulled off in 50 years. Plus, okay, you ready for this? The last time that a team won a game trailing by 15 points while also having 5 turnovers, which Jared Goff was a disaster in this game. 5 turnovers, down 15. Last time a team won a game under those circumstances, 1970. The darn Nixon administration last time we've seen this. Like this, and again, Jared Goff threw 5 picks. He could have thrown like 7 or 8. Jared Goff was a mess last night in Houston. We could show Jared Goff's numbers right here. He had 2 touchdowns passing. That bumped his pass ring up tremendously. Completed only 50% of his throws, 240, 2 touchdowns, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 interceptions. QBR 0 to 100 of 29 and a passer rating. This is just, it's worse than Cooper Rush, 59. And the Lions won. It's a different version of what I said earlier with the Kansas City Chiefs. This team's freaking terrifying, no matter who they play. And what makes it so impressive, I talk about with this Detroit team, like it doesn't matter who they play. It could be a 1 o'clock game against the Titans. It could be a primetime game against the Texans. It could be the big game on Fox between them and the Packers and the Cowboys. Same intensity, same effort, same fight, same hustle. Does not change one iota. And that obviously points to the head coach, Dan Campbell. But all of a sudden, oddly, despite losing their best player on the side, Detroit's got a really good defense. So they struggled against Minnesota, gave up 29 points. The Vikings can score yesterday notwithstanding. 14 against Tennessee, another 14 in Lambeau. It was the Lions' first outdoor game of the year. They go to Lambeau Field and hold the Packers to 14 points. And then last night, give up 23 to Houston, but pitched a shutout in the second half of this game. So you got to give a ton of credit to Aaron Glenn, who we talk about Ben Johnson is going to get head coaching offers and is likely not going to be with the franchise next year. Chances are Aaron Glenn could be following Mr. Johnson right out the door as well. Like, Aaron Glenn has done an amazing job with this group. Detroit last year wasn't very good defensively. I think a lot of it was kind of a personnel problem. Trying to get used to the scheme. The fit works. And by the way, Zadarius Smith has not played a snap yet. So Zadarius Smith should be back next week when Detroit plays Jacksonville. They're going to roll Jacksonville. They're 13-point favorites. No question about that. Trail by 15 points, win a game with 5 turnovers. Again, so much like the Chiefs, and this is why I predicted back in September these two are going to meet in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. If something's down, if one phase of the team is down, the other one will pick them right back up. If Jared Goff is playing maybe the worst game of his career, maybe, make that case. He had the 2 touchdowns, which helped the comeback. Kudos, but Jared Goff is awful. And then what is always, listen, I've been I don't want to say a Jared Goff guy. I wouldn't consider myself that, but I've been very praiseworthy of Jared Goff the last couple of seasons. I've been very impressed with his sort of renaissance in Detroit that I did not see coming after the Rams traded him for Matthew Stafford. But the book has always been out on Jared Goff because he is in many ways the last of a dying breed of strictly pocket quarterbacks. It's this. Get pressure on him, he's a mess. He can't move. He's not a good decision maker with the football when he's pressured. Listen, every quarterback's decision making comes down when they're running for their lives. Yeah, Jared Goff is a statue back there. Again, last of a dying breed of quarterbacks. So the O-line for Detroit doesn't play well. They were dealing with some makeshift. They had to move Dan Skipper to left tackle, which is the first start of his career there. But then the running game was working, and then the defense gets turnovers, and then now some of it, of course, when you make a comeback like that under such dire circumstances, sometimes you need the other team to shoot themselves in the foot. And you got an offensive lineman strip sack at his own quarterback, C.J. Stroud, in the second half of this game to really kind of fuel Detroit's comeback, and then to walk it off in typical, is there any other team that will win a game the way Detroit won the game? At the very end, you got the kid Bates, Jake Bates, I think he's from the Houston area, he's certainly from Texas. They said in the broadcast last night. Hits, it's the closest, most narrow game-winning field goal I've ever seen that didn't hit the upright. That wasn't a doink. That wasn't like a bank shot, so to speak. I mean, when he hits that thing, moving to the left, I'm like, oh crap, that missed. We're going overtime, and then he just sneaks it right into left upright. So it was a typical Detroit Lions win. This is what they do. And I mean, listen, there's teams like in the NFC. I really like the Los Angeles Rams. I'll obviously predict their game later tonight against the Miami Dolphins. Atlanta is fun. I don't know. I don't love their defense and situationally not good at the end of the game yesterday against the Saints. Philly's talented. Don't believe in the coach. Like, you look at the NFC right now, Green Bay could beat them. I think Green Bay in dry circumstances in Detroit at Ford Field could potentially beat them. I think the Rams could too. They almost did in week 1. The Niners could too as well, but they're beat up and there's a real vibes problem over there. This team is, I mean, I know I sound like a broken record, but they're a blast to watch. Dan Campbell is the guy who's ready to play every week. Aaron Glenn called an unreal second half. Ben Johnson, despite his quarterback playing like mess out there, was great. Running game was good. I mean, it was a typical Detroit Lions win. That's what they do. They just kind of grind it out. We hear the cliche, play for 60 minutes, play for 60 minutes. They literally play for 60 minutes straight until the final whistle. They don't let up. Their effort level, regardless of score, blowing them out, getting blown out, close game, effort level doesn't change. Preparation doesn't change. Adjustments do if necessary. And that's what Detroit did, and that's why they beat the Houston Texans last night. Very impressed by what I saw from Detroit. I mean, I watched the game like, dang, it looks like I'm going to have to knock Detroit down on Bryce's best 10. Nope. KC Detroit have been 1-2 since week 1. Spoiler alert, they're going to be there again. Unbelievable stuff. Patrick, when I watch Detroit, there's a fight with plenty of roars. They're not afraid and will maul you at the most vulnerable moment. I have an affinity for the Lions, the animals, not the strongest, fastest, but will use tenacity to feast. These traits make up the Detroit Lions. I envy their success with smart football decisions. Yes, shut up, Brad Holmes. Coaching and a team that has an identity. Structure matters in building a winning team that developed a winner's mentality, and it's contagious. That's a great word to use for it, Patrick, because that's what it is. You hear this more in basketball, some in baseball. There's a joy that the Lions play with. Again, somewhat similar to the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs never look worried. They never look like the heart rate, the Mahomes heart rate never. I mean, I can't see it or see the exact statistics on that, but Mahomes always looks calm. Andy Reid's chill. So's Kelsey and all these guys. That's how I feel about Detroit. And when they've got you, boy, you know it. You get Dan Campbell, he'll pump a fist, or Amon-Ra St. Brown doing some kind of crazy touchdown dance. Like it's a blast to watch. And I'll tell you, how lucky will the NFL be if we get the Super Bowl? I think we are. I think Chiefs Lions is not going to win. Everybody stays healthy. Obviously, I'm pulling like heck for my Steelers, who I think today are a Super Bowl contender. But for the health of the NFL, oh my gosh, it'd be phenomenal. Well, here's who aren't phenomenal. Who could have seen this coming? A team that's old, washed up, been poorly run my whole life, hasn't made the playoffs since I was in the first grade. Bad play calling, fired the coach, overrated talent. Then again, maybe the cayenne peppers was supposed to fix those things up. I'm obviously referring to the worst team in the state of New Jersey, New York Jets. No, the Giants are not worse than the Jets. The Giants at least compete in games. Jets lose to a quietly good Cardinals team, 31-6 in Arizona. Again, I say quietly good. Arizona's got talent. Kyler's playing well. Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, give that team credit. They're far better than I think most people thought. Well coached. Jonathan Gannon is doing a great job with that team. 31-6. There's a number of things we can point to for why the Jets are bad. Breece Hall is the most overrated running back in the league. Garrett Wilson, I wouldn't say is the most overrated receiver in the league, but he's overvalued just because of who he plays for. I think Garrett Wilson is uber talented, and if and when he eventually actually gets a good quarterback at some point in his career, I think he'll explode. I think he's a great player, or has the potential to be. He's just overvalued now, based on who he's with. It's an old offensive line, the defense. Oh, shocker. Let's see. Listen, Robert Saleh is a deeply flawed head coach. That man can coach defense if anyone else in the league can. Ask Niners fans. And the Niners have a great coordinator since they had D'Amico, but Saleh to me is the best coordinator that the Niners ever had. Man can coach defense, and what a shocker. The Jets might be the worst defense in football since they fired Robert Saleh. But if this guy wants the bulk of the credit when it goes well, wants to sound like the revolutionary, the philosopher, the man who has all the answers. Of course, talking about Aaron Rodgers, who had a bad day at the office and has had a bad year at the corporation, at the business. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers, who's been utterly dreadful.
You done messed up, Aaron!
Sorry, I had to put that in there. Here's the thing with Aaron Rodgers. We could show you his numbers. We could show you he's been bad. 12th in TD interception ratio isn't bad, but other than that, it's terrible. 17th in pass yards per game, 25th in yards per attempt, 29th in completion percentage, 23rd in passer rating, 23rd in QBR, and 26th the Jets are in points per game. Aaron's aging. Aaron isn't the same player he used to be. We know this. At least I knew it. I feel like others didn't catch on because he throws a pretty spiral. When you look at the old quarterbacks that have fallen from grace, aren't the same guy they used to be, hello, Father Time's undefeated. It's going to get all of us. You think about Brady as last few years in Tampa. You think about Peyton at the end in Denver, Breeze in New Orleans, Eli in New York. You think about these guys that by the end, they're a shell of their former self. And I have to imagine it is, because put it mildly, I was not a great athlete growing up, but I have to imagine for those that are, it's got to be so painful when you're like, I've been this for so long, and now I try so hard, I put the work in, I'm just not that guy anymore because I've gotten older. Aaron's feeling like the way that other old quarterbacks have felt. But those guys, particularly the legends, the Bradys, the Mannings, Drew Brees, Eli was a Super Bowl legend. I wouldn't put Eli in the class of those guys, obviously. Even when their skills had diminished. For example, Brady. When Brady Brady's second last year in the league at age 44. I thought he should have won league MVP. But his last year in the NFL, I think he set the NFL record for completions. Other than that, he was fine. Like, he was on his best day, a fringe top 10 quarterback. On his worst, kind of in that, what's a good category? Not in the a tier above Daniel Jones, like in the Derek Carr tier on his worst day. His last year in the NFL, Tom Brady was. But Tom was always calm. Tom always brought stability, a leadership. The Buccaneers, listen, I know they're 4-6, but playing their hearts out, beat up right now. Like the Bucs are now compared to 10 years ago, different franchise. Tom set that foundation. A lot of the guys that won a Super Bowl with Brady are still there. They've set the foundation there. You could rely on that leadership from Tom Brady. Peyton Manning, folks, Peyton might have had the worst last year by a quarterback in NFL history. 9 touchdowns, 17 picks. The Broncos won a Super Bowl. I don't want to say completely in spite of him because Peyton was actually okay in the playoffs, but the Broncos defense led by Von Miller was insane. But those guys in Denver revered Peyton. They loved Peyton. I mean, Peyton, there was a point in that year where Peyton Manning got hurt. Brock Osweiler came in. The Broncos were still winning games, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like Denver could make a run. It wasn't like Peyton was playing that much better than Osweiler, but there was a calmness. There was okay, the sheriff's in town. He's ready to go. When Tom Brady walks the room, everybody is silent. Like, okay, the GOAT's walked in. When Drew Brees at the end of his career, when his skills had greatly diminished, there's still belief in New Orleans. We could still get this done. Even the Giants, who were terrible, still are, but were terrible when Eli Manning had greatly diminished, they freaking loved Eli. They loved the guy. OBJ couldn't speak highly enough of him. Neither could Saquon Barkley. Those guys loved Eli Manning. You see the body language of the Jets? Sagged shoulders. Not overly enthusiastic. Doesn't look like it looks like they'd rather be literally. Sauce Gardner looks like he'd rather be literally anywhere else but where he's at, which is a football field on Sundays. There's a team takes on the identity and the leadership traits of its franchise quarterback. And given how Aaron is, to me, what it shows, because it's not just comparing Aaron to old quarterbacks when they were out of their prime. It's comparing Aaron to old quarterbacks and then going back to when they were younger and at the peak of their powers, winning MVPs or winning Super Bowls. What this shows, the fall of the Jets, I should say fall of the Jets, they never took off. But the utter just mess that the Jets are. Forget the rosters and that talented. Folks, we've seen rosters that aren't great. How many teams has Mike Tomlin taken the playoffs that were like, they're okay? We've seen coaches do it. But when you think about Manning, you think about Brady, you think about Drew Brees, older guys that just were out of their prime and eventually had to step away. There was still that sense, that's that guy. That's Drew Brees. Might as well be the mayor of New Orleans. That's Tom Brady. It's the greatest quarterback ever. That's Peyton Manning. That's a sheriff, baby. 5-time MVP. He gets in there and gets it done, man. You don't see that same confidence from the Jets. And what it does, this year's really hurting Aaron's legacy a lot because, A, he got everything he wanted with New York. He got the receivers that he wanted, the coaching staff that he wanted, heck, the roster that he wanted, the herbal tea, the break in the middle of mandatory minicamp that he wanted. And the Jets are actually worse this year than they were last year when they had Zach Wilson at quarterback. Is that it's why Aaron never won, or I should say never won. He did actually win a Super Bowl. It's why he didn't win more. Yeah, McCarthy wasn't great. Yeah, they had some defenses that weren't up to snuff. We get that. But how many runs in the playoffs in Green Bay can you point to post-2010? We were like, man, Aaron had nothing to do with that. We won't go over them one by one, but Aaron had something pretty significant to do with all of those playoff losses. It shows that he was overly reliant on natural ability, and to his credit, great at the line of scrimmage. Aaron's always been great at the line of scrimmage. But when his skills have diminished, being great at the line of scrimmage doesn't matter as much. And if nothing else, the guys don't have the leadership to be able to rely on. The Jets are not only the Jets done, I called them officially done after they lost to the Steelers because, 2-5 teams generally don't make the playoffs. But at 3-7, I mean, I can't comprehend this. Look, I know the Colts aren't playing well, but the Jets are favorites next week by a field goal. Like, why? They're bad. The quarterback's bad. The O-line's bad. Everything about this team, coaching staff, ownership, GM, they're all bad. Most people have come to my side of the table. This finally, it took them only winning 3 of their first 10 games in order for me to do this. This year has hurt Aaron's legacy about as bad as any of them. And it should, on face value, it should, because he's not the same player that he used to be. But when he told us he was, when he told us he had all the answers, when in reality, he's not that concerned with football. Folks, he almost ran for VP of the United States. He's not a serious player at this point. He's certainly not the same player as it from a skills perspective, because he's 40 off an Achilles. Brady, Manning, Breeze, to a degree Eli Manning, who has more Super Bowl rings than Rodgers and beaten him once badly in a playoff game, I might add. If all has failed, if they weren't seeing things quite at the line of scrimmage, if the skills diminished, they could always rely on leadership. The guys in the locker room, the guys in the sideline all knew, okay, but if long as we got him, we're good. You don't feel that. Aaron leaves Green Bay and they've gotten significantly better. If he leaves the Jets, how much worse do they get? They're 3-7. How much worse would they get? Seriously. They were better last year with Zach Wilson, who some folks were like, can this guy even play? It's a mess. Patrick. I love this whole New York paper planes thing you're doing, by the way, Patrick. I'm loving this. You done messed up, Aaron. What's his excuse this week? Oh, you can't win games scoring 6 points. Paper planes were a road favorite and didn't take flight. What a shocker. Arizona is, I wouldn't go here, Patrick. Arizona is Detroit Lions West. We'll compete until the final whistle. We questioned Jonathan Gannon's presser, but it's working. Excuse me. I get where you're coming from there, Patrick. What I would say is, obviously from a talent perspective, that's not what I'm referring to. There's a certain not that the Cardinals don't have this, but the Lions have so many different ways to beat you. And not only that, Detroit now has a real structure underneath them now. They got the GM, they got the coach, they got the coordinators. Maybe Arizona does. We just don't know that yet, so I wouldn't go quite there, but I understand what you're saying. Patrick, I'll say it again. Green Bay is smiling from ear to ear, not having to deal with Aaron Philosopher Rodgers. They're having fun with Jordan Love and the young core. Oh, by the way, it's funny thank you. Well, not to say it's funny you bring this up, because I think you were mostly on my team here, Patrick. Mike Williams was thrown under the bus, goes to Pittsburgh, and looks totally different now in an actual offense with an actual quarterback as well. Yeah, Mike Williams, hey, you got to run the red line. You got to run the red line. Mike Williams, what is he doing out there? Oh, I don't know. He's catching game-winning touchdowns to win games against the Washington Commanders. That's all. And by the way, I was skeptical about the Mike Williams thing, but I didn't take enough into account. Oh, that's right. He's playing for the worst franchise in football. And Jeff's right. Rodgers is not even a top 25 quarterback on my list right now. Can we show the Rodgers numbers again? He's just objectively not. All of those numbers are the touchdown interception ratio is not bad, but that's because Rodgers just doesn't throw deep balls anymore. They're not good. Obviously people know that now, but dang, sad that it took this long. All right, let's go in. We got NFL recap coming up. All right, NFL Week 10 recap. Let's do this, and we'll predict Dolphins and Rams to finish the show. First off, in a game that was kind of kicked to the curb by a lot of folks, including myself, as these are two of the worst teams in the league. Worst defense in football, arguably, versus the worst offensive football, arguably in between the, obviously the Panthers and the, excuse me, something's in my throat here. Goodness gracious. I think I'm ready to go. Anyways, though, two of the worst teams in the league in Munich. Turned out to be kind of a fun game, bad game, but nonetheless a fun game. Carolina Panthers won 20-17 in overtime. Bryce Young was fine. He was okay. He had a pass rating of 86. For Bryce Young, you'll take that. But in large part, the Panthers won because they had, a fumble late by the Giants, but also a $188 rushing. Daniel Jones, the other hand, second worst contract in NFL history to Deshaun Watson, had 2 interceptions with 0 touchdowns and had a pass rating of 50. And Brian Dable suggested that Daniel Jones could get benched before it is all said and done. So Giants are in rough shape. Listen. If they move on from Daniel Jones, and I'm not sure how they're going to be able to do that with that contract, they've still got good players. Obviously, I love Neighbors. I think we all love Neighbors. Defensively, their front four is as good as there is in football, and I think Dable is a great coach. I think Dable's a great coach who doesn't have much to work with. As for Carolina, they're better than Dallas. Now Dallas doesn't have Dak. They're better than Dallas. We saw that yesterday. Ugliest game of the day. Vikings 12, Jaguars 7. I kept saying it. And I didn't lose faith. I'm waiting for Sam Darnold to turn back into Sam Darnold. And right on cue, not one, not two, but 3 interceptions, 2 of them being in the end zone. Sam had a pass rating of 48. But somehow, some way, he was outdone by old Mac Jones. Can we look at Mac's stat line? Let's do that. 14-22, a $111 through the air in 4 quarters. He threw for 111 yards in 4 quarters of NFL play. 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. By the way, those 2 interceptions came on back-to-back drives to cost the Jags. Like it was so fitting. QBR 0 to 100 of 12 and a passer rating of 38. For context, I think you get like a 38-ish. Was a 33 passer rating you get for just spiking the ball. So, I mean, listen, we know Mac Jones is bad, but Mac Jones is the easiest player in football by far to root against, including Aaron Rodgers, including Aaron. At least Aaron's kind of fun to watch on occasion. This dude's terrible. Y'all out there banging Trevor Lawrence. It could get worse. It could get worse, Jacksonville. It really could. He's bad. Whack Jones, who? I thought he was good. 2-3 years ago, I got into a lot of arguments with people about Mac Jones. He's bad. He's real bad. Saints. How about the Saints? I took them in the points. I thought Atlanta would win this game by a field goal. It turned out the Saints won this game by a field goal. Bad situational football at the end by Atlanta with some clock issues on 4th down. But listen, interim head coaches, those guys tend to do well in their first. Like I said, the interim head coach is the substitute teacher of the NFL. They come in, they turn down the temperature, right? It's not as tense. Like it's obviously you weren't playing well, otherwise the coach wouldn't have gotten fired. Usually it's a position coach, something like that, an assistant. That's just gonna be like, hey, let's just go out there and play ball. Let's just go out there and play our tails off. Now you get into rough spots. Ask the Raiders in hiring interims to be your full-time head coach, but. Good win for the Saints. Derek Carr threw a couple touchdowns, played well. So, by the way, Alvin Kamara, go Vols, baby. All-time leading rusher in the history of the New Orleans Saints. So, congratulations to him and a solid win. The Saints breaking their 7-game losing streak. Niners, Buccaneers. So, first of all, I'm mad at the outcome in the simple fact that I took San Francisco minus 6.5. I loved that bet, and it took him a walk-off field goal just to get out of there alive. First off, I thought Purdy was great. Look at Purdy. The Purdy numbers are impressive on their face. 2 touchdowns, no picks, 353 through the air, passer rating of 119, and a QBR of 78. So Purdy was great. And by the way, doing so without the help of a run game, with Deebo Samuel at their freaking choking long snappers, kickers, choking all special teams out. The throw Purdy made under pressure to Christian McCaffrey might have been the throw of week 10. Under pressure, guys, right in his face, gets it out of there, hits Christian McCaffrey in stride. McCaffrey's got, I was thinking fresh legs, but it appears kind of needs to work himself back in line. Christian McCaffrey will be Christian McCaffrey in due time. You just got to give him the requisite time to get back into it. I can honestly say that we're 10 weeks in. That may have been the least impressive win of the NFL season this far. I'm not even kidding when I say that. Now, a win's a win is a win. You got to take what you can get. Here's why I say that. Tampa Bay is on a short week. You're on a bye week. Get it's on the road, but still. Baker's out here. And Baker touchdown. Baker gamer out here. He's just doing his thing. But there's no Mike Evans. There's no Chris Godwin. You're off a bye. Other teams on a short week. And you need a walk-off field goal. And part of the reason you need a walk-off field goal is Kyle Shanahan literally doesn't care about special teams. I've come to that conclusion. It's dead to him. They had a special teams error late that cost them against the Rams. They had multiple missed kicks by Jake Moody in this game. He goes 3 for 6. And I just removed the ball at will. He just couldn't make freaking kicks. He made the walk-off. Kudos to him. But it's so much of a disaster. You got Deebo Samuel out there choking guys. I love Kyle Shanahan, but he's got 2 big blind spots. Number one is, as brilliant a coach as he is, he doesn't adjust that well. He's going to have to evolve from this. He's very rigid to his gameplay. He's very rigid to his playbook. He doesn't open it up a ton if things aren't going well. And the second thing, the Niners could very easily have the worst special teams in football. Their kicker's a disaster, Jake Moody. He's been dealing with injuries. I get it. And kudos to him. Kudos to him for stepping up there and walking it off and giving San Francisco a win that they desperately needed because of how crowded that division is. It's a it borders on unacceptable. I mean, it really does. You look at the best teams in the NFL. Chiefs are great in special teams. So are the Detroit Lions. The Bills, I have questions about their kicker, but generally pretty good on special teams. The Steelers, great on special teams. All of these teams. Baltimore for years. John Harbaugh is literally a special teams coach, good on special teams. The Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. I love Kyle, but guys, he's got to find to at least put some attention into this. I don't know if it's a coaching staff problem. I don't know if he's got the wrong guy in there. I don't know what's going on. I really don't. Yeah, Jeff is excited. He says, hell yeah, Bryson, throw of the week. Patrick, if the Niners made their field goals, that's a double-digit win. Baker competed, but this team was depleted. Obviously talking about the Tampa Bay Bucks. Jeff, well, that throw by Baker on 4th and 7 when Bosa has him in his arms, he still makes a throw was insane. Yeah, I was watching that, so I had the quad TV up on YouTube TV. Obviously, I'm watching the Steelers game, and I'm like, oh, man, this Buccaneer-Niners game is coming out of the wire. When Baker stiff arms, one of the baddest pass rushers in the game, throws a pass. I think it was to the running back maybe. On 4th and 7, gets the first down. I'm like, dang, Tampa's going to win this thing. Settled for a field goal. Purdy drove him down and walked it off. But that was one of the more impressive plays we've seen from a quarterback this season. And Jeff says, oh, no, not maybe. We for sure had the worst special teams in football. It cost you one game, could have easily cost you another. And if not for that, the Niners would be sitting here at 4-5 in a division where the Cardinals are playing great football. And the Rams are healthy. Like, Niners needed this one. Kudos to him for getting it. But yikes. Defense doing what they did or really didn't do against a depleted Bucs team, as Patrick pointed out in the comments. And by the way, the Deebo Samuel thing, that's something. If it's something when Aaron Rodgers doesn't accept a hug from Robert Saleh, then it's something when a teammate chokes out another teammate. That's here's what I know. That's not a good thing. Okay? That's not something the Niners want to happen. Let's put it that way. Bills just keep on rolling 30-20 over the Colts. Josh Allen wasn't great. Doesn't matter because the running game was helped by Josh Allen. James Cook was great. Ran for a touchdown this game. Poor old man Flacco. Just turning it over like crazy. My man EJ Savage, this is my second shout out to EJ on the show. He said, combine the two New York quarterbacks. Who would they be? I said, it's Joe Flacco. Old Aaron Rodgers and makes really stupid decisions. Daniel Jones. He was bad yesterday. I still defend them starting Flacco over Anthony Richardson because I think Anthony Richardson just cannot throw. Like it's Tebow level. Like it's, yeah. And by the way, it says he's going to start next week against the Jets. He beat the Jets last year in Cleveland. Better situation, I get it, all things considered, but beat the Jets last year in his revenge game. Now he's going to be in this week. How are the Jets favored? What are we talking about? Patriots beat the Bears 19-3. I said that this was kind of the turning point of the season for Chicago. Like, they're more talented, no question, on paper than New England. And we give credit to New England, too. Drake May was really good. Week by week, I'm like, New England got something in Drake May. It's stupid to say, obviously, because he's the third pick in the draft, but he was kind of erratic in college, made some mistakes, didn't make a mistake in this game. But that's something that could be, I think, if it's not to the flagrant degree of a Carson Wentz or a Sam Darnold, it can be coached out. He moves well. The arm strength is there. He's accurate. If New England can upgrade that roster, undo the damage that Belichick did to their franchise, Drake May can be something really, really interesting, to put it mildly. On the Chicago side, though, this was the turning point. I think the entire team turned on Matt Eberflus after the ending against Washington, the Hail Mary, the tip ball. What led before that, running the fullback / center but handoff on it wasn't 4th and goals. I think it was a 1st or 2nd down from the 1-inch line was what? They get mopped last week, and they scored 3 points this week, and Caleb has his worst game as a pro. He had a pass rating of 63 to QBR of 13. This team's turning on his coach. Listen, if I had to put a bet now on who the Bears coach is going to be next year, I think it's Ben Johnson. You put Ben Johnson with Caleb Williams and those weapons, all of a sudden you got something. But this is a team I thought would make the playoffs. I don't think they can. I think they're broken. In large part because, as I've always said, you can lose games. The second you use the locker room, you're done. It's over. Pack it up and go home. You're done. You don't ever get that back. Chargers beat the Titans 27-17. Justin Herbert keeps it going. Pass rating of 123. Great completion percentage. Chargers ran up and down the Titans. 145 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Jim Harbaugh just keeps doing his thing. He established the identity. And listen, they were my AFC title game pick to face Kansas City. Hope I'm wrong in the sense that I hope the Steelers are there, but Chargers are playing great football, and I certainly am holding to that pick. I talked about those last 3 games. All right. Before we get out of here, we got a game tonight is it in Los Angeles? I think it is. Yeah, in Los Angeles, featuring the Rams and the Dolphins. So let's go and predict that before we get out of here. Rams-Dolphins in Los Angeles, in SoFi to end Week 10. All right, so Dolphins-Rams. LA is a 2.5-point favorite home. Now, this is a line that has moved a lot in the last few days. So I checked on Friday. It said Rams -1. I'm like, man, I am all over this one. It's gone up to 2.5. The graphic we're about to show is one way or the other 2.5. The graphic I have on my phone on ESPN says -2, so they've come back down. Some folks are starting to bet Miami now. So if this is a desperation situation for the Dolphins, this is you lose this game, you fall to 2-7, you're pretty much dead in the water. I know Miami has a game next week against the Raiders, the Patriots. They've got winnable games. They also have some games against Green Bay, San Francisco, Houston. They've got tough ones down the road. They have to be pretty much perfect down the stretch. The thing for Los Angeles, real quick for Miami too, Tyreek Hill's dealing with, I think, some sort of meniscus tear. He is going to play in this game. For the Rams, I picked them to go to the NFC title game before the season to win that crowded NFC West. I still feel good about that pick. We'll see what happens with Arizona and San Francisco. I don't buy Seattle long term. To win the game in Seattle, they won last week. Puka punches a guy in the middle of that game. They lose Puka. Cooper Kupp is not the guy that can just shoulder an offense the way he could as recently as just 3 years ago when he was the best receiver in football. All those things considered. It's the Rams at home. It's McVay. It's Stafford. It's a Dolphins defense that can be had. That's putting it mildly. It's Tua. Now, Tua, by the way, I think I saw a stat. Tua's won like 13 games or something crazy against Super Bowl winning head coaches. Now, a lot of those come against Belichick because the Dolphins own the Patriots even when Brady was there for whatever reason. But I like the Rams this spot. I think this is a pretty easy one. Again, 1-score game. The Dolphins will fight. Listen, they're in a do-or-die situation, but I feel very comfortable taking the Rams -2.5 and winning this game by a final score of 27-21 over the Miami Dolphins. In effect, basically ending Miami's season and propelling the Rams to a half game back, or keeping pace at a half game back in that NFC West, which will be a fun division to watch the rest of the way. Only division in the NFL where literally any team can win it. So that's, you always get a kick out of that. You always have fun with that. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Wednesday. And we will be back on Wednesday this time at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. That is our next goal to do so. So if you have not subscribed, please tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody you know about Carving Up Live. And please hit the subscribe button yourself. It just takes you 2 seconds and boom, you are part of the Carving It Up family. Also, just importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. You can find us at the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. My man Patrick Brown, I imagine, has some articles on the way on the Grid Network's website. Check those out. Other content creators, we got some great people on this network. Please check out their stuff as well on YouTube and all podcast streaming platforms. Listen, we're in it. We're about to be, it's Veterans Day. And again, once again, my shout out to all the awesome men and women out there who've sacrificed everything for this country, that have put in what they put in physically, mentally, emotionally, to sustain freedom in this land. We will forever be in debt to you folks. There's no question about it. And listen, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is something that both, in this very polarized political time, I think this is something that a lot of Democrats and Republicans in different ways have gotten wrong. We got to protect our vets. I mean, if these are the people that are going to lay it all out there and do what they do for this nation, there's not a universe, there's not an America that should exist in which these folks are second-class citizens, in which these folks are dealing with financial problems. These people serve the United States of America. They protected our freedoms. We need to protect them. We need to repay back them in what for at least attempt to do what they've done for us. So shout out to all the amazing men and women out there on this Veterans Day. All right. We will see you guys on Wednesday. Please be sure to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators, those that are in and those who have recently been elected, to demand change for gun violence in America. Doesn't matter where you lean, right, left, center. This is an issue that affects every single one of us as Americans on a day-to-day basis. And again, this is a polarized time, but if there's, again, going back to something we can all agree on, all of it, I don't believe in polls much, if ever, but they overwhelmingly show most Americans agree on the basic steps we can take to address this problem. So we got to make our voices heard at the ballot box in the future, but in the here and now, addressing it with our local lawmakers to get this solved as soon as possible and protect the people in this beautiful country. All right, fun show today. A lot of football. By the way, just if I can quickly, as we get out of here, say the Warriors beat the Thunder last night. We're 8-2, and tomorrow night, Klay Thompson comes home. We'll have plenty of reaction to that on Wednesday's show. That should be a very emotional night in the Bay Area. I'm probably gonna cry. I'm mushy when it comes to my favorite sports teams, especially my favorite players, and Klay is certainly one of them. But very excited. We got a fun show on Wednesday. Football, NBA, probably some college football playoff rankings reaction. You're not going to miss it. Bryson's Best 10. We're going to have a loaded show and predictions, of course, for Philadelphia and Washington. Big Thursday night game in the NFC East. Stay tuned for all that. Stay safe, everybody. God bless y'all. Peace out. Watch out for them Warriors. Giannis, come on, man. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.